Put on it. Clear to land 31 right.
Delta 260. Yes, sir, dude.
Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream here on the Mentor Pilot channel. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic wherever you are. If you're new to these Sunday night live streams, the way that we do this is that you guys ask all of the questions that you might have and I will try to answer them to the best of my capability. It doesn't mean that I know all of the answers, guys, but I will do my absolute best to tell you anything that I might know. Now, the way that I prioritize things is that I will start by answering every question that comes up in the super chat, right? So those of you who choose to support the channel by using the super chat, I will take your questions first, and then I will look at the normal chat as well, where all of you others are hanging out. But very important, I will be using the Mentor Aviation app chat as well. So when there's a little bit time over, I'll go into the app chat and I'll talk to people and answer the questions that's coming up there, like I do every day pretty much when I'm in the chat and talking to people. It's a great community in there. So, I'm guessing that you guys have a lot of questions. There's a lot of things going on inside of the aviation business at the moment, both positive and negative things. As always, I won't be able to go into details on recent crashes or investigations that I don't have any basis on. It wouldn't be professional of me to do so, but I will be able to tell you about the systems that are involved to as far as my capabilities reaches, all right? So I see that there's already some questions coming in on the super chat, and the first one is Dog Pauly. Hey Dog, great to have you here. Dog is here almost every one of my live streams. It's always great to have you here. Hi Mentor, have you ever had a stick shaker stall, not just a practice one? Is it scary? No, Dog. We do, when we're following our operational procedures, our standard operational procedures, that should keep us out of harm's way. So, unless there's something extraordinary happen, like for example a wind shear event or something like that, then we don't really get even close to stick shake. As you saw in my video that I did the other day, you see that there's loads of warnings, like this, the speed has to go way below what is considered normal before you get even close to a stick shaker event. So you would have had that oral warning of speed low, for example, before you get there, and if you don't react to that, then I don't know what you're going to react to. So no, I have never had a real life stick shaker event. However, we do practice it regularly in the simulator in order to know how to deal with it in case it would happen to us. So more questions here from Rob Arturi and Alexi C. So both of you didn't ask any real questions. If you wanted to ask a question but it didn't come through, then go into the Mentor Aviation app, go to the back in the settings, and there is a submit feedback button there. Hit that one, and that will send me an email, and I will answer it. Just write super chat as the as a reason for the email, and I will answer it for you. Right? Thank you very much for supporting the channel. It's highly appreciated. Okay, Paul J.R. St. Jack has asked the first question that has to do with the debacle that we'll have to call the MAX situation at the moment. And the question is, why did Boeing use only one angle of attack sensor? All right. So those of you who've been following the app knows that I've sent out I send out loads of push notifications about what's going on, but I sent out one today that went into how the FAA was giving some of the authority for monitoring the safety bit of the MAX away to Boeing, right? And how that was highly controversial, to say the least. In that article, they actually did talk about this, all right? There are basically different levels of how potentially dangerous a system is, all right? So a system which, if it malfunctions, only can lead to minor injuries but no deaths, is a level 1 system. That one only needs one sensor, so it doesn't need a redundancy. So then if you have a level 2 system, which could potentially, if it fails at the wrong moment, cause severe injuries or even a certain death to some passengers, well, then it's a level 2 system and it needs a 2-part redundancy. And then you have systems that are safety critical, that if they fail, they could lead to a complete hull loss. And those ones, they need 2 or more redundancies built in. Now, when MCAS was being tested out, when MCAS was introduced, according to this article, this is what I'm basing it on, it's from the Seattle Times article. According to that, the MCAS system was basically thought to be only a level 1 system, that if it would malfunction, it wouldn't be that bad. So it only needed one angle of attack sensor, in this case, to be connected to it. Now, this obviously was is looking like it's a fatal mistake. Boeing has already said that they had already been working on an upgrade to this system that would include both angle of attack sensors to make sure that if one goes faulty, the system doesn't activate. But it hadn't been implemented yet. Okay, so the reason was, at least from the beginning, that there was a gross miscalculation of what this system could actually do, and that's where it came from, the fact that it was only connected to one angle of attack. Once again, this is not my words now, I'm taking this straight from the article that I pushed out in the app earlier on. Valerio Visgreneo, great to see you here again. Do you have rest time between sectors? No, not between sectors. When we're working, you have up to potentially 13 hours. If you're working during daylight hours, you have up to potentially 13 hours that you can work more or less non-stop, okay? In between the sectors, we have what we call a turnaround, and the turnaround is more work than when we're up in cruise level, right? In the turnaround, we have to get the passengers off. The pilot flying has to set up for the next sector, has to prepare the departure, how to brief it, make sure the FMC and CDU is properly set up, monitor fueling, things like that. The pilot monitoring is out doing the walk around of the aircraft and coming in, and when he or she comes back into the cockpit, and it's time for briefings and everything. We do that in my airline in 25 minutes, which is very, very little. So there's basically no rest there. The resting we do when we are en route or when we get home after the day. This makes it, it's hard work to be an airline pilot. There's no question about that, but it's perfectly doable. And then you reduce the amount of time that you can work depending on how many sectors you do. So more than 2 sectors, reduce it with half an hour for each sector. And then you reduce it if you work in the windows of circadian low, which basically means nighttime. You can't work as much either, but that's how the rest is calculated. Man, guys, you're on fire in the super chat at the moment. I have to make sure that I can answer all of these. Joshua Engering, will you be flying a 737 MAX eventually once it gets cleared again? How do you feel about that? Love the videos, thank you. Yeah. I will be flying the MAX. I am going through training right now, which is a computer-based training. It takes about 3 hours to do. There's no more training than that needed at the moment. We'll see what happens after this all is done. But I will be perfectly confident with flying the aircraft once these things have been sorted. Because after this, you can be absolutely sure that one of the most scrutinized aircraft in the entire industry will be the MAX. All right, Boeing cannot afford anything like this to happen ever again to that aircraft. So it will be looked through thoroughly. You can be absolutely sure of that, and I am sure of that. I am confident in the 737. I've flown it for so many years, and the 737 MAX does have these bigger engines, hence the MCAS system. But the structure of it all, the aircraft in itself, is still an extremely good aircraft. Okay, I know I'm going to get some pushback from that, but this is at least this is the impression that I have of the aircraft. Now, like I said, the MAX will be scrutinized after this, so don't worry. And yes, I'm looking forward to it. Christoph Esch, Hello from Germany. Thanks for all your good content. Well, thank you. Listen, guys, I'm so happy that you guys enjoy these little videos that I do and the little live streams that I do. It is why I am doing this in the first place. If it weren't for you, if you guys weren't here cheering me on, asking questions, being inside of the app chat and like, oh, we want to see more of this and that, then I wouldn't be doing it, guys. So I'm really happy that you guys like it, and yeah, I'm gonna continue as long as you guys want me to. Jake Schroeder, when new airplanes are certified, they do a wet runway test. In videos, it looks like they roll through a pool with sides. How do planes do this? Well, they have to be able to do this. It's a test to make sure that the aircraft is still stoppable and controllable, even if it would land on a completely flooded runway. All right. So you have something called aquaplaning, which happens when you have a lot of water on a runway and the aircraft, basically can't. The wheels doesn't really touch the asphalt under, so we lose all braking action, but it still needs to be controllable. This is how they have to certify that it is possible for it to do. Just like anything in a certification process, they have to check all the kind of parameters that you can think about before the aircraft is allowed to the public. This is why it is such a huge deal with these MCAS, all right? Because the feeling is that this aircraft has been certified, but then you have this potential flaw in it. But once again, I want to emphasize that we haven't seen the preclusion of this. We haven't seen exactly what caused what inside of here. But if there is an issue with the system that could pitch the nose down with just the fault of one sensor, then that's a huge deal from a certification point of view. And this is what, right, I'm gonna put it down to make it even simpler. Flying an aircraft with passenger on board is all about what the passengers think. All right, we assume, and the whole airline business is built on confidence, right? It's built on the confidence of passengers. Passengers who are not informed about how the aircraft flies, how the aviation world works, or anything like that, they should, with good confidence, be able to sit down in an aircraft and fly over the Atlantic, at 800 kilometers per hour plus. That can only happen if the passengers have full confidence in not only the plane manufacturers, but also the aviation authorities who are issuing the licenses to these aviation manufacturers. Okay, and they have to have full confidence in the flying pilots. Right. Whenever you have something that is interfering with that, then you have a problem. Okay, if it's pilots, that's a huge issue. That's why you see this being such a big deal whenever the pilots are blamed for something, because then it becomes a training issue. Why weren't these pilots trained to do this, and what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we change the training? But when it comes to something like this, it goes one step deeper. All right, it goes into the actual essence, the aircraft in itself, and the authorities are supposed to make sure that nothing unsafe comes out to the public. And this is why this MAX incident is such a huge deal. This is why the MAXes were grounded all over the world, and while they're still grounded now, it's because they're risking this crucial confidence in the industry in itself. Okay, people can kind of live with the fact that a pilot might make a mistake. You know that you can make a mistake. I know that I can make a mistake. But people cannot live with the fact that authorities can make mistakes, all right? Because that's where we put our full confidence. And this is a crucial thing in this that I hope that everyone understands. Okay, so Jeff Stoddard. How long has the MAX 8 been in service since it was introduced? That's a good question. I don't know exactly how long it's been. It's been about a year, probably a little bit more than that. I think it was introduced in late 2017. You might correct me on that. I haven't actually checked up that. But we're talking a year and a half maximum that it's been in service. Steaming Spoon 60. Hi Mentor. If you suddenly encounter severe to moderate turbulence at cruise, are you allowed to make changes to altitude heading without ATC permission? Well, if you're in severe turbulence, you don't really have a choice, to be perfectly honest, because the aircraft will be tossed about. That's the definition of severe turbulence. So we have a procedure for severe turbulence, which means that we disconnect the outer throttle, we set a cruise thrust, a turbulence penetration cruise thrust that we find on our FMC CDU in the cruise page. We set that, and then we do something that we pretty much only do in the case of severe turbulence, which is we go from command on the autopilot to control wheel steering, CWS. You see that if you're a simulator enthusiast out there, you know that there's a CVS pitch that no one really touches, but you use that, okay? And that turns the autopilot from being a semi-smart autopilot that's following the modes that we tell them, to basically just holding the pitch attitude and the roll attitude that we tell it. And that is good because we wanted to keep a specific pitch, but we let the altitude vary, okay? So yes, the answer to your question is yes, you can, but you have to call it ATC. And you have to give them a pan call at least, telling them that we are unable to maintain altitude. We're no longer RVSM compliant, as in we can't be with only 1,000 feet separation from opposite traffic because we don't know how much this is going to do. And then we are going to have to ask for a descent because you wouldn't sit at cruise altitude with severe turbulence in these kind of conditions, right? But the answer to your question is yes, under these circumstances, we're not allowed to, but you have to let the altitude vary. Thomas Stenback, any thoughts on the new APS MCC course compared to the old MCC and MCC Jock? And how might this affect the employability for fresh out-of-school pilots? Yeah, the new APS MCC is a fantastic idea. All right, it is a great idea. I've been in contact with the people behind it that came up with it, and I know what the background to it is, and the background is very, very sane. Basically, the airlines started to grow tired of the fact that there were so many different MCC courses out there, and you could get someone coming for an airline interview who had done a cheap MCC course somewhere out in the sticks on an FMBT2, with just barely the absolute minimum, done minimum hours and so on. They qualified to be an MCC course, which meant that they could apply, but when it came to the simulator assessment for the airline, they clearly did not have the multi-crew kind of cooperation that was needed. All right, so what they said was we need to do something about this, and what they tried to do was this APS MCC course is basically trying to prepare people that have paid to get their CPL, to paid training to become airline pilot, to get proper training in towards the airlines. So instead of crowning your training with a really short and cheap MCC course because you don't have any money anymore, this APS MCC course is supposed to be a longer variant, which kind of, the end where it's really, really important that your skills are as good as possible to prepare you for your airline interview, that you get the skill set that you need. So I think that this APS MCC course eventually is going to push out all of the other MCC courses out there. The airlines are going to start looking for people who have done that course specifically. I know that Ryanair, for example, does that already. Looks for people who have done this particular course. I know that the MCC providers out there are starting to remake their courses to be compliant to this, and it's good. All right, it is very, very good. So my answer to the question, what I think about them is that it's a step in the right direction. It's a step to where we have to go. How long have you been an airline pilot? From MH. I've been an airline pilot for 18 years now. I started when I was 20 years old. I'm turning 38. I have been a captain since 2007. So that's 12 years now. And I've been a training captain for about 10 years. There's loads of... Guys, you can wait a little bit with Super Chat questions now, because I have to make sure that I can answer them and take some other questions as well. So, Charlie Buxton, do pilots have the same security as passengers? Yes, we do. And there's a very good reason for that as well. Like, the pilots have to go through the same type of security, because if we didn't, then we would be potential terrorist targets. All right? If the terrorists knew that, well, the security is much more lax for pilots, well, then they could target pilots or cabin crew to say like, okay, we're holding your family, you bring this to security. So for that reason, and for many other reasons, we are scrutinized and looked at exactly like a passenger. We have to go through the metal detectors, we have to go through all of it, we have to, it's exactly the same. So the answer is yes. Raymond Lee, can you talk about memory items, runaway stabilizer? Yes. All right. So I will take this up and I will show it to you. Let's see here. Runaway stabilizer. Flight controls, chapter 9. What I'm showing you basically is the quick reference handbook. Okay. Runaway stabilizer, you will find, is the absolute top one under flight control chapter. Okay. And I will take it up. So memory items are a part of checklist that we have to do by memory. So there are some checklists that are seen as being so important that we don't have time to get the checklist up and verify them. The pilots have to know them by heart, okay? And they have to do that because they might have to action them very quickly. And the way that this is done is that the pilot flying, as always, asks for state malfunction. Pilot monitoring then verifies what the malfunction is. In the case of a runaway stabilizer, we have to do this very quickly because the stabilizer now moving, all right? It's going either to pitch down or pitch up. So very quickly we'll establish we have a runaway stabilizer. Then the pilot flying will call runaway stabilizer memory items, right? The memory items are control column, hold firmly. Okay? That's speak for itself. You have to make sure that the aircraft doesn't follow the stabilizer to either pitch forward or aft. So control column, hold firmly. Autopilot, if engaged, disengaged. It's disengaged because in most of the cases the autopilot is what is causing the problem. All right. If that doesn't work, the next point on the list is stabilizer trim cutout, switch it to cutout. Now, if you're following my Instagram feed and the last three pictures back and 2 pictures back was about where those stabilizer cutout switches were. So if you just look for Mentour underline pilot, you'll be able to find me on Instagram if you're not already following me. And you'll be able to see that because sometimes I do these explanatory things there as well, where I take a picture of a specific button and I tell you guys what that is all about. And so the stabilizer trim cutoff switches go to cutoff. What that does is that cuts off all the electric motor that's driving all of the automatic systems, because it's not only the MCAS that is using the stabilizer trim, it is the speed trim system which exists on the 737NG as well. Which also helps the pilots when we're flying manually. If we're not doing any inputs, then it will start trimming to keep the aircraft in trim. It's the autopilot who's using the elevator primarily, but using the stabilizer as well to make sure that there's no forces involved. All of that gets cut off, right? So once you cut the stabilizer trim cutoff switches to cutoff, they don't move anymore. If we need to trim, which we obviously need to do, then what we need to do is we need to flick out a little lever on the actual trim wheel, and then you manually trim it using that, right? So there's no motor anymore, it's manually trimmed, which is perfectly doable on a 737. Now, if the autopilot or the stabilizer trim continues to run after this, then we have a really bad situation. Then the only thing left to do as part of the memory items is the stabilizer trim wheel grasp and hold. And that is exactly what it sounds like. That is the pilot actually physically taking a hand, grabbing this spinning stabilizer trim wheel and forcing it to hold it still. Okay, this is not a nice thing to do. We teach this in the sim to make sure that if you do have to grab it in the front, so you have the whole strength of the arm holding against. Do not grab it at the back, because then you have only your wrists that's holding it, and you can crack that. Consider putting a fire glove on, especially if it's running quickly. But this all have to be done very quickly, guys, because if you leave this for too long, obviously then you might find yourself in a situation where the stabilizer trim is full nose down, full nose up, and you don't have enough elevator authority anymore. Now, guys, a question for you: would you like me to do a video on this, explaining it, maybe show you if I can get access to a simulator? Okay. Once again, I want to emphasize that this has nothing to do with the 737 MAXs that have crashed, because, well, to a certain extent it does, because it has to do with the stabilizer trim potentially. But what I would do is just show you the memory items and what we would do and how it would look. All right, that would be interesting. I take those hundreds of yeses that's coming up as a positive. All right, I'm going to see what I can do. Okay, I don't have access to a simulator right now, but I'm going to see what I can do to try to show that to you, because I think it's important that you get to see both what that looks like, and also what happens if the stabilizer trim goes full forward. And I assure you it's not going to be pretty. So, Nicholas Blackmore, this channel is absolutely fantastic. Yay! That's what I'm trying for, you guys. That is why I am doing this. Once again, I love interacting with you. If there's people out there who are afraid of flying or feel like nervous flyers, and I can help in some way of explaining things from my perspective, and you guys are helped by that, that is great. All right, that really makes me happy. And every email that you send telling me that you've been helped by this, it makes this work easier. All right, good. Guys, as always, I need to do a little bit of a promo. I need to get you guys into the Mentour Aviation app. Please, if you haven't downloaded, do it now. There's some fantastic changes on the way. There's already an update that makes it more pretty to look at. At the moment, we're about almost 6,000 people daily inside of the app. I send out push notification about everything that's going on that I find important inside of the aviation world. And you can go in, you can chat about it. There will be forums soon, guys. I know that you've been complaining about that there's so much action going on in the chat that it's hard to follow. There will be forums in my next update, which is coming in, a month or so. And guys, if you want to support the app, right now I have a sale on. Okay, there's a sale on the collections in there. You can get 2 hours of instruction with me in 360 format. Okay, so I've been inside of the simulator, and I've done stuff like, for example, a rejected takeoff and emergency evacuation. Or if you want to learn how to set up a 737 from cold, then I have created these 360 instructional videos. You can swipe around, or you can move the phone around to see what I'm doing or what the first officer is doing. And you can also, if you want, if you have a Google Cardboard headset, you can put that on. It will feel like sitting on the jump seat together with me when I'm flying around, right? So get into the app, get a collection, and support the development, and let us make this into this fantastic forum where I can answer questions, with other pilots can answer questions, and you as a passenger or an airline student or whatever can get them answered. Okay. So, Voidy, greetings from Ukraine. What pilot should do if after V1 major engine failure happens, like full loss on one engine and partial on the second? And that's a bad situation, all right? The only thing you can do, like we will first do our engine failure maneuver, which is what we do when we lose the first engine. And you can see that there is a collection inside of the app for exactly that. Engine failure after takeoff, what we do, what checklist we do. Now, if the other one is only working partially, well, we're going to have to use that one as much as we can. So we wouldn't force it. Depends on what happened. If there's been ice that's been ingested, like the case of Gottröra, for example, there's a famous accident in where Scandinavian Airlines system MD-81, I think, or 82, lost both engines. Well, be careful with the remaining engine. Get as much thrust as you can to climb away, and then expeditiously get back towards the runway. Get yourself in a situation where if that final engine fails, you can go in and land. And those of you who've been following the channel, you've seen that this aircraft, the 737, flies quite well without engines, provided that you have enough altitude. It has about a glide ratio of between 1 to 18 to 1 to 20. So for each meter down, it goes 20 meters forward. So providing that you get up a little bit of altitude and you can get a turn going so that you're close to the airport, you can just glide it back in if you lose that remaining engine as well, which is what I showed in that video. All right, you can go back and you can see what happens if you lose both engines after takeoff, and you'll see, how good it flies back. It's actually a very good video. So, Bongio 434, thank you for supporting the channel. Have you ever had an in-flight emergency? I've had a few technical problems, flaps that wouldn't work properly, some more simple technical problems as well. I've had indication of an engine overheat, which is kind of bad-ish. I've had many medical emergencies as well, but nothing like nothing extremely serious, nothing that's involving flight controls or fire, God forbid. Ryan May, good evening. Thank you for great content. Well, good evening to you, and thank you for being here, supporting the channel. Sam Petros, Sam, great to have you here, Sam. I have to say, Sam is helping this whole project a lot. Okay, Sam has been helping me with researching to find news all over the world. So I'd say at the moment a good 75% of all of the push notifications that you get in the Mentour Aviation app at the moment has originated from Sam and his research. So great thumbs up to you, fantastic research. And by the way, guys, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, I have recently gone out and said that I need people to help me as interns with the Mentour Aviation app, because I need people from all over the world, especially now from Asia and also from the US, that can find the kind of things that Sam is doing, find news or things that's interesting, combine them together into the team, discuss what we should push out to the community, and then create push notifications and create playlists and things like that. Because at the moment it's basically me and my friend Jack who's doing this. I'm gonna have to build a team, make it much bigger, so that we can cover all parts of the globe and make sure that you get the best information as quickly as possible. And Sam is asking, how do pilots inspect tail-mounted engines? Well, in most cases, you know, they tend to be back steps for boarding, and if there is back steps, that gives you a possibility to go back and check them from the back steps. If not, I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that they actually have to go up and inspect them in the same way as we do, because on the lower mounted engines, it's more likely that you'll suck in foreign objects or foreign object damage, FOD. Things like that. The higher mounted wouldn't be as susceptible to that, but it's a great question. I haven't actually thought about that. EMAT543, Mentor, love the channel. Breitling makes beautiful aviation watches. Are aviation watches still of any use in today's aircraft? Well, a good timepiece is always a good timepiece. You know, a reliable watch is fantastic to have. However, for actual navigation and things, no, not really. Not on the air transport category aircraft. However, when you're doing your PPL and when you're flying smaller aircraft, they might well be, okay, because you are going to need to do some dead reckoning navigation where you fly on a specific course at a specific time, and these special watches tend to have functions for that. So, you know, I would always, you know, if I could get it, I don't have a Breitling myself. I wish I did, but you know, a good quality, good looking timepiece is always nice. But it's not like you're going to use it much when you're flying. Do you think I'll be? Oh, sorry, Ian Gill. Hey, Ian, great. Another I would say face, but another name that I highly recognize. Ian is asking, do you think that I'll be on the MAX 8 on the 12th of May? Borderline. You might. It all depends on what kind of data comes out of the investigation now. I know that the black boxes have been fully downloaded and successfully downloaded now. They've been handed over to the Ethiopian team that is doing the full investigation. So within the next few days, I think we're going to start seeing some data from that. If it turns out that it is indeed a problem that can be fixed with the update that Boeing has promised, then I think there is a small chance that you might, within a month, fly the MAX again. If it isn't, if it's something else but is related, then it might take longer time to figure out what it is. And if it's something completely unrelated, well, then the MAX might be flying, you know, this week. If it turns out that no, this was actually something completely different, this was pilot error or something like that, well, then there is no cause for keeping the MAX on the ground anymore, and it will be up like that. Okay, so it's very hard to say. It's all depending on what comes out of the investigation. Frank Vignads, hello Mentor, talking about redundancy, what possible options do you have when the landing gear won't come out? Greeting from the Netherlands. Yeah, another very bad problem. Is that something you would like to see a video about? Let me see, yes or no? Right, we do have some emergency procedures for getting the gear out. Okay, it depends a little bit on why the gear is stuck. If the gear is stuck up for whatever reason, then there are some maneuvering we can do, some light G loading that we can do to try to take it out, okay? But we have also procedures for landing with partial gear up, right? That's going to obviously be a problem. We are going to hit the engine as such, depending on what nose, if it's the nose gear, for example, well then that's a little bit better actually, because you can land normally on the main gear, keep the nose up as long as possible, and then just gently put the nose down when the speed has lowered a little bit. If it's one of the main gears, then it's going to be a bit of an issue when you land. It's going to hit the engine on one side. It's likely that it's going to start wearing towards that side of the runway. We'll have to have the emergency equipment. That's a full-blown emergency basically, but it is extremely rare that happens. Normally if you would have a problem getting a gear out, we do have an emergency extension procedure that we use, and that tends to fix the problem in 99% of the cases. Raymond Lee, greeting from Hong Kong. Greeting from Catalonia. Can you talk about the memory item runaway stabilizer? Well, I just did that actually. I hope you didn't miss it. I don't think that I'm going to go through it again, because I've just gone through it. If you missed it, then please rewatch this. What's going to happen with this one, all right, this live stream, is that I'm going to put it up inside of the app, all right? So it won't be seen on my channel because it clutters the channel in between all of the other videos that I do. But if you have the app, you'll be able to go into the app and just watch it again for the next couple of days inside of the app, all right? Runaway stabilizer memory items, you have them here. And you see that those little box prompts here. That's the end of the checklist, if that works, right? And here, those little dashed lines here, that's the end of the memory items. Everything above that is memory items, everything below is normal checklist. All right, so, oh man, I am well behind. There we go. Your SB, hi. A YouTuber told in a video about his last flight with the Concorde, and he said that when it reached supersonic speed, he couldn't hear the famous sonic boom. He couldn't explain why. Can you? Yeah, because you are the source of the boom, right? You are the thing that is going quicker. The boom is going to happen behind you, because by definition, you're flying quicker than the sound. So when the sound happens, you're already past it, okay? So the boom happens because you get compressibility. Like all of a sudden, instead of the air molecules kind of wearing out a little bit in front of the aircraft, now when you push through the speed of sound, there won't be. So there will be a wave of compressed air, which is the boom. But the thing is that forms, when it has been formed, you're already through it. You're already long gone. So it's only going to be heard behind you, below you. You will not hear it because you're flying quicker than the sound. So that's the quick explanation to it. Kian Agar, hi Mentor, is taking a loan for CPL worth it? But I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? It's very hard for me to say yes and no to that question, because it all depends on your what your economy is looking like, and also if you are going to get a job quickly enough after. If you take a loan, let's say for €100,000, and you do your CPL training, and then you have all of your licenses, and then you can't get a job and you have to go and work in McDonald's afterwards, well then obviously it is not worth it, all right? If you can do it and you can find a job reasonably quick, and with reasonably I mean within the next 2 years or so after, well then you're going to start earning the money you need to repay the loan, and very quickly you're going to start earning more money than that, and you are going to repay the loan and you're going to have more money, okay? And in that case, absolutely, then it's worth it. But this is also why I tell people that before you start your training, you have to look at what your economy looks like, and you have to look at the worst case scenario. What happens if I do this training and I can't get a job for the first 2 years? How do I repay the loan? And if the answer to that is I can't, well then you can't really do it, right? Then you have to do it the modular way, maybe work and then earn up money to pay for your flight training as you go. Because you wouldn't want to put yourself in a situation where the bank is kind of knocking on your door and you have to work 2 different jobs in order to repay the training that you're not working for. You see what I mean? Okay? Because this has happened, right? This is why I am such a proponent for doing these suitability tests before you start the training. Your flight school should be giving them to you. If they don't, you have to be careful. But there's so many different variables to this. Åke Renman, I watch YouTube videos with ATC comms, but it is very difficult to hear what is said. How are you able to hear, remember, and repeat back those long messages? You get used to it. There's one thing, right? It's just like any kind of language. If you listen to a foreign language that you don't understand, you think, how can they possibly understand those sounds, right? But this is just kind of another language. You learn it, and also you know pretty much what to expect. When I'm getting into London TMA, which is extremely busy, right? When I'm getting in there and I'm getting these quick messages, I already know what kind of arrival route I'm expecting. I also know what kind of clearance I normally get, and I know kind of the frequencies as well. I don't know them by heart, but I recognize them, and all of that comes with experience. And when I know that, it means that my readback is going to be easier. And also, if I don't hear it, let's say that I miss something, I just read back what I heard, what I'm absolutely sure of, and then I tell them, please repeat the next. And they will repeat it, and I'll read back that. Okay, because sometimes they can get a little bit too hot, and you give these terribly long clearances. And obviously, for the sake of air safety, we have to make sure that we know and understand the entire clearance, and then we just ask for them to repeat it. But this comes with experience. The more exposure you get, the better you'll become. Mudgate Bron, thank you very much for your support. Christian Lambach again. Have you ever needed to do any kind of memory items in real life? I have to think now. Yeah. I had we had an engine overheat, and that requires memory items to be done. Attila Bodis. The answer to any question by Mentour along the lines of should I do a video on X is yes, for all values of X. yeah, but there's some that are more bigger X's than others, right? If I say, for example, should I do a video about like the hydraulic A system of the 737, that is going to be less interesting for some people than should I do a cockpit video about the runaway stabilizer, which is a much more cinematic thing to watch. So I do understand that, and listen, I'm going to do my absolute best to show you Okay, I got a few yeses on that one as well. But I'm gonna do my absolute best to give you as much information as you need to understand what's going on. I saw that the video that I did this Friday has gone absolutely viral. It is almost 400, if not more than 400,000 views already. That shows me that you guys are interested in getting someone explaining what's going on. Okay, and I can do that as long as it doesn't go into the realm of trying to figure out why an accident has happened. I will never do that. Right, that is never going to happen. But I can do stuff like explaining different systems that are involved, for example. That I can do. Cool. MH, great channel. Your dog needs his or her own channel, though. Yeah, that has been said before. I do think that it's going. Well, right now they're fighting just outside of the door here. That will probably make good TV, but otherwise, not so sure. Adam Chackert, how often do you need to cut power to the galley? Very rarely, right? Never, basically. That's part of the power shedding that you do in case you have a power loss. So if you're down to battery power, then the galleys, for example, will be automatically shed off because it's non-essential power. Otherwise, no, we can keep it on. Or fire. If there would be a fire in an oven, for example, or if there would be an undetermined source of smoke in the galley, then we will also cut the power. So, Adam Checkard, were you an aviation firefighter in the military? I was indeed. I was actually a civilian military firefighter. I wasn't working for the military as such. I was working on a civilian airport. But yes, when I did my military duty, my military service for a year, I did that as a firefighter on an airport. Grizzly, you may have been asked before, but I want to know how long it takes to become a captain on average. Yeah, on average it's very hard to say because, for example, in the airline that I work at the moment, if you are good enough and you play your cards right and you have the skills needed, you could be a captain within 3.5 to 4 years. Okay, that is the shortest that you can ever be. Then you can have a look at some of the flag carriers, which are not expanding much, and people are only leaving when they die or get retired. And in that case, they only need upgrades when that happens. Okay. That means that it's going to take a long time. So anything from 15 to 20 years, I've heard in some airlines. So that means that there's a huge span while in the quick, airlines that are expanding rapidly will go quickly. Airlines that are not expanding rapidly, it will go slower. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take some questions here from the normal chat as well and make sure that I'm not, completely forgetting you guys. Do you think biofuel will be used more in the future? I sincerely hope so. All right. I think so. I think that what we will see is biofuels coming in. I think we're going to see hybrid engines as well. I did a push on that yesterday about Rolls-Royce having actually successfully tested an engine for light helicopters, smaller aircraft, which is a hybrid engine. And that is something that I really hope is going to happen. But, I think, realistically, we're going to have to go that way. The fossil fuels is killing the planet, and we're going to have to do something. Okay, Pham Nguyen. SOPs in case of multiple wing loss. Well, in case of multiple wing loss, the SOP is basically just, kiss yourself goodbye, unfortunately. There's not much you can do without wings. Unless you're on the ground, which in that case you just evacuate. Bill Green, do you think the sensors are bad on the 737 MAX, like the Airbus 330 had in the Air France crash? I know the sensors on the MAX were replaced just before the crash. No, not necessarily. I believe that those are the same angle of attack vanes that we have on the NG. And like I was saying when we were discussing this in the chat before, I've flown for 18 years and I've never had a problem with an angle of attack vane, except once, and that was because we had a lightning strike straight into the angle of attack vane that actually cut it in half. But even then it worked. Even then it still provided values. So I'm gonna say no to that, but these things happens. When you're dealing with manufacturers who are manufacturing thousands of parts, there's going to be some defective parts. Now, they normally are tested, and you normally notice it straight away.